My name is Michelle Byer, your host of Addiction Voices of Hope, heard here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Addiction Voices of Hope is presented by Malone University and Quest Recovery and Prevention Services. If you would like to be a sponsor, please go up to my website, addictionvoicesofhope.com. Please welcome my guest today, Fran Gerbig from the Stark County Anti-Drug Coalition. Hi, Fran.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You were one of my special guests because we go back a few years now. You found me when I was in the About magazine.
That's right.
So you really gave me my start for what I'm doing right now.
Well, I feel very honored and proud that that's what happened, but I'm just also honored that you're part of the Anti-Drug Coalition because it's that uniqueness of the members and the diversity that everyone brings to the table that helps us really tackle some of the challenging problems that we have in our county.
We do have some challenging.
You know, Stark County is not so unique. Every county in the state of Ohio, every state in the United States is struggling with some kind of substance abuse issue. But what we have to remember is that each community is so very unique, and everyone has their own perspective, and you just can't have a rubber stamp solution. And that's why the Anti-Drug Coalition is so powerful, is because it is composed of community members who are impassioned to make a drug-free Stark County a reality. And it's that perspective and it's that understanding of what makes up Stark County that gives us the insight that we need to go forward. So it's so cool to see a coalition work and work well and come up with strategies that are specific for what we need, not specific for, you know, another community 3 states away.
Mm-hmm. What is the Anti-Drug Coalition? What is that?
Well, the Anti-Drug Coalition is actually a department of the Mental Health Recovery Services Board of Stark County. It was created in 2006, so you know we're seeing a good long time now, by a group of concerned community members who really wanted to see some action plans put into place to address substance abuse in Stark County. We were lucky enough to be funded by a Drug-Free Communities grant that gave us some financial stability and some resources. And it really kind of helped shape what the coalition is. The Drug-Free Communities Grant is probably one of the longest funders of prevention programs in the United States, and it is a federally funded grant. And it's very specific on what the coalition needs to look like. So we are required to have members from 12 different sectors that represent the community. So, you know, the faith community, education, the medical community, business community, parents, law enforcement, our youth are members of our coalition. And because we have all these sectors represented, we get all these different perspectives. So, you know, we can't tell students, young people, this is what they need to be doing if we're not really hearing from them. Because nobody likes to be told what to do. People want to be listened to, and they want to be involved when it comes to solving the problem. But we need to have everybody's input. So that's what I think is so amazing about a coalition, is because we do have the input. And it's not to say that we all agree on the same solution, but because we're able to come together and share our own perspectives, then we can come together and decide, okay, this is what the problem is. These are why we think it's happening. We can go and collect data to document why it's happening, and then we can really be creative and come up with some solutions to address the problem.
How long have you been with the coalition?
Well, I'm kind of a newbie, really. If you think of the coalition starting in 2006, I didn't start until 2012. Okay. So I finished my 2nd year working on my 3rd year with the coalition.
Okay, so that's pretty much when you found me, because it must have been right when you started.
Real shortly after that, yeah. And, you know, coalitions have a lifespan, and there's ups and downs, and you need to be respectful of what people can give you and the time commitment that it takes to be in a coalition. And it's also really important to make sure that there's, you know, fresh voices that come to the table. So I'm constantly looking for new people who can provide expertise and insight, just to kind of validate what we're thinking, but also to bring new perspective, because it has to be a living organization. It has to be constantly growing and challenging to be successful and to really be impactful.
Give us an example of something that you do.
Well, this morning I responded to an email from the Alliance Hospital looking for resources because they have had, unfortunately, several overdoses that resulted in death of young people using heroin. And so they are going to respond by having a community fair at their farmers market to provide information to the Alliance population. And so they emailed me, and I was able to pull a lot of resources that I have in my office. I'll be able to share with them information about the drug collection boxes that are in Stark County, and hopefully kind of personalize, you know, a little mini presentation that they can take to the community.
Tell us about those drug take-back boxes. They're out there. We can drop off our drugs anytime, can't we? Our
Right, and
prescription drugs.
that is really a super illustration of the power of a coalition and how many people came together to solve a problem. Heroin abuse, prescription drug abuse has been long documented to be a huge concern in Stark County and the state of Ohio. And we've had enormous success with our drug take-back days, but that only happens twice a year. What do you do with those medications that you collect on your countertops that are, you know, very tempting to a lot of people to experiment with, to see if it helps or not? So between the Anti-Drug Coalition and the Opiate Task Force and, oh my goodness, the Stark County Sheriff's Department and the Police Chiefs Association and the Waste Management, I mean, that just tells you the collaboration.
Yeah.
Solus of Stark County. So many people came together to kind of solve this problem. And so we have 10 boxes across the county at different police departments. They're in the lobby, they're open 24/7, and folks can come and drop off all their medications that they don't need. And it doesn't have to be prescription drugs, it can be over-the-counter allergy medications, vitamins, even pet medications. You know, pet meds are a little risky because pets use the same things that we do, and you know, a lot of times we don't think of them as being a potential risk, but those can be dropped off. Ointments, creams, lotions, cough syrups, all that can be dropped off into that box. And through the partnership with the Sheriff's Department and Metro Narcotics and the Waste Management District, we have someone who will go and collect this medication, and then we take it and it's burned. Republic Steel donates that surface to us.
They burn it.
They burn it because that is the safest way. It does not impact the environment. It immediately goes into water vapor.
Wow, okay, so, I mean, I've always thrown mine down the toilet. That isn't something we should do?
Not anymore, and I understand where you thought that, because that was kind of standard practice probably 3 years ago. That quickly, things have changed. But we have found out that this medication then gets into our water system. And so we're seeing some really unusual looking fish species.
Really?
Yeah, it's impacting the way fish develop, it impacts the quality of the water, and so it's even impacting human consumption, because if you drink the water and those medications are in there, there are certain levels of hormones that are there that just aren't healthy. And another thing that was suggested is that you throw it away in the trash if you mix it with like cat litter or coffee grounds. But even that doesn't prevent it from leaching into the landfills and the water system.
Okay.
So if you think about the drug collection boxes, it's a win-win because it protects the environment. You know, it's not getting into our water system, it's not polluting our land. And then it's also getting it out of the hands of children, other people who might be experimenting with it. It gets it off the countertop and gets it disposed of safely. So it's really a win-win situation.
That is a win-win.
And it's just a beautiful illustration of how a coalition, different people from across the county can come together and solve a problem.
Well, I know I have a whole bunch I need to bring back
Well,
now.
you know, it's very easy to say what you need to do, but it's also but it is very easy
And how
just
can
to
they
do
find
it.
where those boxes are?
Well, they can contact me at the Mental Health Recovery Services Board, or they can go to the Mental Health Recovery Services Board's website, and there's a link that tells you right where those are. But it's really easy, very easy.
Okay. Now, you do a lot of preventive work. Is that what I'm understanding?
Prevention is the key for the coalition, and there are lots of different ways that we do it. We provide information, hopefully create some community awareness, but the charge for the coalition is really to do what's called an environmental strategy, which is a strategy that can impact a great number of people across a community. So the drug prescription boxes, the collection boxes, that would be considered an environmental strategy because there's a policy in place. It's open to everyone in the community, and it impacts the entire county. Drug Take-Back Day, that's another environmental strategy because it's all different people coming together, impacting the entire community. Whereas if we do a community presentation, that's not so much all of the community. That's a specific sector or group. But it's a balance, you know, and it's something that we have to continually do, is to make sure that drug prevention is in the front of everyone's brain in our county.
That's for sure. And I think it is on everyone's brain. Everybody is thinking about it. It's in your face, yet you still want to ignore that it's really not here and it's really not happening. Do you kind of see that too?
I do. I think it's one of those things that we don't like to think about, that it's going to impact us directly. But the one thing that has been very sobering as I've gone forward is that it impacts every family in our community in one form or fashion. You know, it may not be your particular child, but it might be the friend of your child, or it might be the friend of a family, or someone that you know at church. There's no one that's protected, but there's a lot we can do to protect our children and to protect ourselves, and you just have to know what those steps are.
When we come back, we have to take a short break. If you have a question for Fran, please give us a call at 330-492-6881. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Fran a little bit more detail about what we were just talking about, so we'll be right back. Thanks. Back to Addiction, Voices of Hope. I am your host, Michelle Beyer, here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Here's the number again if you would like to ask Fran a question. It's 330-492-6881. And we are talking to Fran Gerbig from the Stark County Anti-Drug Coalition today. And Fran, when we left, I was going to ask you about how parents can help do some preventative work with their children.
Sure. You know, the first thing I would recommend any family to do is go through your house, find out what medications are there, make a list of them, and then lock them up. Because you don't want to forget what you have. You don't want them to be readily available by curious teenagers, curious middle schoolers, or you don't want them available to their friends when they come to your house. So that would be the first thing I would say, is monitor what you have, make sure you secure what you have, and when you're done with it, throw it away. Take it to a drug collection box and get rid of it. Because we do that with our firearms. I'm hoping we do that with alcohol that's in our home. We need to do that with prescription drugs. But even beyond that, you need to make sure that you have a relationship with your child. And I recognize how busy we all are. I'm a mom too. I know how difficult it is to connect with my kids when I'm at work and they're going 5 different directions in the afternoon. But, make sure that you're talking with them throughout the day, especially now in the summertime when they have so much free time on their hands. Make sure they're involved in things. We were talking during the break about how important jobs are. I think that's a great thing for a teenager to have a job. But check in with them. How's the job going? Make sure you have communication. Schedule dates if you have to, just to be able to reconnect. Dinner time isn't always a possibility, and I get that. But you can find creative ways to reconnect. Know your children's friends. Know who they are with. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to call parents and say, hey, do you need help chaperoning this party, or I heard this, or I heard that. Make yourself available. Make your home the safe place for kids to come. Open that up. And don't be afraid to snoop. And I know that has a negative connotation, but I think parents really need to take that responsibility and be aware of what's in their children's bedroom, what's in their children's backpack. Look through the drawers, investigate what's inside socks. There are creative places where, unfortunately, where our kids are hiding their drugs, and we need to be on top of that.
Very creative.
If you have a suspicion, don't overlook it. Have a conversation with your child, and if you're not getting resolution, reach out to the experts that are in our county to really, get to the root of whatever might be troubling you or troubling your child, because wouldn't it be better to be wrong than not investigate and realize that something is really horrible? So really, parents just need to be involved and engaged and in their child's business. I'm sorry, if they live in your house, then you need to be in their business.
I totally agree. I hear so many parents say, oh, well, I don't want them to be mad at me. Who cares? They'll get over it.
Well, we want to be our friend. We want to be a friend to our child, but I think we also have to remember that first and foremost, we're the parent. And it's our job as a parent to make sure they're safe, to make sure they're being educated, to make sure they're healthy, And sometimes that supersedes being a best friend.
Right. I know that I've gone through my daughter's phone, and she thinks I'm horrible, but I found things in there that led me to understand what she's doing and where she's going, and so I mean it Snoop. It
Well,
helps.
and it's so hard being a teenager. It really is. There's so much pressure from media and from friends, and you're trying to figure out where you're going in the world. Uh, but I think parents really are the best resource to help be that guiding beacon. To be that kind of ballast to keep them on track. And if you don't have that relationship, then it's going to be doubly harder to get that done.
Mm-hmm. You have a teen group.
I do.
Okay. Tell us about your teen group.
Well, as mandated by the grant, we have to have youth involvement in the coalition, which only makes sense because if we're trying to create drug-free strategies for youth, you've got to have youth input. You've got to know where they're thinking and what's impacting them. So I have a group called Youth Choose, and it's kind of play on the words because youth is spelled capital Y-O-U, choose, so that individual kids know that they can make choices for themselves. They're not dependent upon their peers. They're not dependent upon the media or what's in, the local movie, the most current movie. They can choose what's good for them. And I'm really impressed with this group of kids because they give up their time once a month to meet with me, to make plans. We just did a summit on Friday this past week, our second annual Youth Leadership Summit, where this was completely designed and developed and led by this core group of students. And so they brought speakers in, we discussed marijuana, we discussed suicide, and we discussed bullying, and came up with strategies for what kids can do to go back into their own schools and kind of address those problems and solve those problems. We had speakers come from the Ohio Youth-Led Prevention Network to talk about what's happening at the state. We had a trooper from the Ohio Highway Patrol come and talk about 5 minutes of for life, which is part of Governor Kasich's Start Talking initiative. So this was all things that the students came up with. The adult advisors made sure things could happen and provided a little bit of coaching, but they led it from the introduction and icebreakers all the way to the evaluation and the closing, and they did a fantastic job.
They're a great group of
They
kids.
are a great group of kids.
They really are. I tried to get my daughter involved in it, and she did like it, but her job keeps her away.
Well, and that's what we have to recognize is that I think teenagers now are probably more engaged and busy than they ever have been. I mean, if you think about school, if you think about jobs and sports and other extracurriculars, and then you throw in having a social life, it's hard to balance everything. And I have to give students a lot of credit for being able to balance and still being able to be, community leaders and willing to serve the community.
Can anyone join this teen group? Are they allowed to just call you and join, or does it matter how many members?
Most definitely. No, there is always a need for more students, and there's always a need for students from all across the county. I mean, it's not just a Canton City group. It needs to be a Stark County group. So we need teens from all over. And I personally think it'd be really exciting then if, we could have groups of teens take information to Canal Fulton and down to Minerva and out to Alliance and, really spread so that we can come together and be a resource and then take it out.
Awesome. Well, that means we have to go to a break. So when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. But if you have a question for Fran, please give us a call at 330-492-6881. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. We'll be right back. To Addiction, Voices of Hope. I am your host, Michelle Byer, here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Here's that number again if you'd like to ask Fran a question. It's 330-492-6881. And when we left, we were talking about teens. And I'd like to continue that topic because right now, it is the teens that are being affected by this heroin right now.
That's really interesting because when I first started, heroin use was up and coming, but it was more older adults. Actually, those in the 40s and 50s, And over the past 2 years, we've seen it creep slowly down into the 30 age group and the 20 age group. And unfortunately, just this year, now we're seeing teens. I was at Minerva High School this morning and had a conversation with their principal. And just this year, they've lost 4 teenagers to heroin overdoses.
Wow.
Which just is heartbreaking. It really is. Such a loss of potential. And they were saying how that they know it's in their community because when their students go out to do service projects, they're finding used needles, so they know that it's there in their community. And as saddening as that is, I want to make sure that people understand that we are really fortunate in Stark County that the majority of our teenagers are not using alcohol. They are not using marijuana. They are not using heroin and prescription drugs. And I think, every day that's something I have to remember, is that the majority of students are making excellent choices. And it's our responsibility as the coalition to make sure that we provide them with accurate information so they can make good choices. It's very easy to focus on, the numbers that are horrible, the numbers that make us so sad because, people are dying, people are becoming addicted. But I think we have to remember that the majority of students in Stark County are making good choices and are really good role models for the middle schoolers and the elementary age kids. So every day I have to really focus on that. And when I look back to Friday and I'm, kind of rehashing things in my mind, that was what was so successful, is to see students reaching out to students and talking about some really hard issues. I mean, suicide. Unfortunately, those numbers are high in Stark County, and we're trying to figure out why is that and how can we help prevent that from happening. And we're seeing a linkage between substance abuse and suicide. And so it was very empowering for me to watch teenagers talk and share ideas and to come up with solutions that they can take into their high school and how they can, reduce that isolationism that exists. I mean, everybody remembers the horrors of the lunchtime cafeteria, not knowing what table to sit at, and how students are going so basic to say, be comfortable to reach out and have somebody sit with you at your table, and how impactful and huge that can be in somebody's day, and how that can be, a strategy to make sure that people don't use drugs and people aren't, forced to think about suicide because you reached out. So it's just those very simple strategies, but I mean, that's being led by students who recognize how impactful that is. So I really want to make sure that, we give credit where credit's due and recognize the student groups across Stark County, because we are really blessed to have, different high schools with different groups who are really being very innovative and who are looking at what's going on in their particular high school and coming up with strategies to address those problems. And I feel very privileged that these students are willing to work with the Anti-Drug Coalition and to make sure that we can share that across the whole county.
And you do have a wide variety of teens involved in that group, don't you?
We do. I mean, we have students from, inner city Canton. We have students from Jackson. We have students from Perry, from Canton local schools. We're always wanting more students because, what works in Canton City is not going to work in Alliance, is not going to work in Jackson, isn't going to work in North Canton. So we need all those voices. I mean, there's some best practices that we can make available, but really it is up to those students to tweak it for their student population.
I had my daughter's friend in, and I had asked her, what works? How do we get to you guys? They're already, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of at the moment, but they're demoralized, or they're so, with video games and movies, nothing scares them.
I think they really are desensitized.
That's it. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that because it's constantly you're being bombarded. Social media is everywhere. It's on everybody's phone. You just can't get away from it. So I think that's was a challenge that the coalition had to realize, is that we need to kind of harness that tool so that we can impact students and so we can reach out to students. I mean, really, the only way that I communicate right now with my Youth Choose students is via text. Facebook is for, moms and dads. Facebook really isn't appropriate for teenagers. I'm not skilled yet in Instagram, although I'm being taught, and I'm new to Twitter. But, we have to accept what is good and what works for them. So that's the best practice as far as communication. You have to be able to embrace that technology and use it for good. And, the students do. I mean, they created a Vine that was, shared throughout the summit last Friday. We're working on a video that hopefully we can load to YouTube. So that they recognize what's powerful.
That's awesome.
They're a great bunch of kids.
They are, and you're very lucky to have them all involved in this. This is awesome, and they're going to help Stark County. But That music means we are done for the day. Thank you for listening to Addiction Voices of Hope. Please like us on Facebook. If you would like to sponsor this show or help fight addiction, please go to my website and email me. And if you're not sure if you're addicted, also go to my website, take a test under the addiction button. I have 4 or 5 different tests you can test yourself and find out if you have an addiction problem. My website is addictionvoicesofhope.com. And until tomorrow, we have Crystal Meister on tomorrow. Love yourself first. This is Michelle Byer for Addiction Voices of Hope, heard here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Have a great afternoon. Thanks. Bye-bye.